Again, story 26, The Ghost Bride of Arnold Hill Mining Company. Before I get into the story, I want to thank a couple of you who heard my smoke detector batteries were low, and the beep on my smoke detector saying the batteries are low, and you pointed out it's time to change your batteries. So I have, so I appreciate that. See how it works? All right. So this story takes place in upstate New York and up in the Adirondacks, where I was living at this time with my son, just the two of us. And what motivated this trip actually out to this old abandoned mine site in Osable Chasms area was my lifelong hobby of collecting old cork bottles. I've got loads of them, like these, stuff like this. And I've been collecting these things since I was a kid, and I prefer to go out and dig them up. And so the guy told me that I worked with, a guy that was from the area his whole life, told me about a place, this old abandoned mines out in the woods, and Arnold Hill Mining Company. And he said there was a lot of stone house walls, abandoned houses made of stone, and mine shafts. He said you're bound to find some old bottles out there. So I wrote down the directions to this place, and I really didn't get around to it. One summer was coming to a close, and I thought, well, it's time to get out there and go on a little expedition. Brought my son with me. He was about probably 10 at the time, 10 or 11 years old. Packed up a lunch, grabbed some shovels and the man's directions, and we wound up in a town called Harkness, New York. Harkness. Yeah, and it took us to a seasonal dirt road at the time called Hibernia Road. And I followed this man's directions, driving along this old dirt road, no houses around, totally out in the middle of the mountains, honestly, Adirondack Mountains. And actually, I found the old stone foundation, actually walls, big old stone houses, cut stone in the woods, just off the road. So I knew we must be there. So I pulled over, and my son and I got out and started looking around. Again, this is a seasonal road. They didn't plow it, so it was pretty well closed through the winter. There's no houses on it, nobody around for quite a ways. So we found the mine shafts in the woods. There were three of them. They were big mine shafts, probably, I'm guessing 15 to 20 foot in diameter, kind of going into the ground at an angle. But they only went in about 10 feet. They were filled in, all three of them. So there was no, they're totally filled in. I didn't find any old bottles. It was the underbrush was so thick. I should have gone in early spring. That's when you want to do this, because when summer comes and there's just so many prickers and grass and weeds, you're not going to really find much. But it was pretty interesting walking around there with my son. And next to the mine shafts, was a one-room white church. Looked really old. And I want to say, I looked up Arnold Hill Mining Company on the internet, and it was in operation. It mined iron ore there from 1793 to 1930. And then it closed down in 1930. But they started mining there in 1793. And I recall one of the big stone houses had on the cornerstone the maker's initials carved into it and the date 1792 carved into the same stone. And I'm pretty sure that stuff's still out there. I did a Google Earth search and I couldn't find anything. Didn't see any traces. I think you'd have to be there because it was all pretty well grown in. But this white church, one room church, where this takes place, the story, was right next to the mine shafts and the old stone houses. So it was like a mining community. That what I read, there was a community of people that lived there, and when the mine closed, everybody pretty much went elsewhere, I guess. Um, so my car was parked not too far away from this one room white church, which didn't look like anybody. There wasn't a parking lot or anything. I don't think they'd had a service in there, a congregation, for quite a few years. It looked like something that New York State probably maintained because as a historical site, because it was in the Adirondacks, and that's a state park. And so the place was well maintained, but I don't think anybody ever used the place. It's just the state does that. There's old one-room schoolhouses and things like that out here and there, and they just maintain them as historical sites. So my son and I are standing by our car, and we're just kind of taking in the sights. We're getting ready to leave. Didn't find any bottles, but we had a good time. It was a nice, warm, sunny day out, and this church was situated in a large, kind of a clearing, maybe 5 to 10 acres. There were no trees to speak of, so point is I had a clear line of sight. And we're standing by the car, and my son's looking that way, and I'm looking this way, and the church was this way. And I look over, and here's the ghost story part, and I see sprinting from the dirt road, really all-out sprint, a woman in a long, flowing white dress. She sprinted from the road, thump, 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 all the way up. I saw her run up the stairs and presumably into the door, the church. I was at such an angle where I couldn't actually see the door, but I could see the church, I could see the woman quite clearly. It was only about 50 feet away. I could actually hear her feet thumping, as she was running. And I'll describe what she looked like. She didn't look ghostly. She had on what I they all seemed to be, I considered to be a wedding dress. It was that luxurious and big of a gown. And it seems like all these women, almost all of them, they're in white. But I thought it was a Sunday morning. It was mid-morning Sunday. And I seen her, like I said, she ran from the dirt road. I see her sprint right up. And this woman was sprinting. And I'd say she was good looking, honestly, very good looking. She had the most luxurious, thick, blonde hair that went down almost to her buns, her waist. And the dress was very full, large, like a wedding gown. And she didn't look bad, honestly, to be honest with you. And she was holding up the front of her dress so that she could run, and not step on the dress. And she was barefooted. I could see that she was barefoot. And I could hear her thump, 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 sprinting, holding that dress up. Her hair and her dress are flowing behind her. She was really running fast. And a young woman with kind of a slender, curvy figure, kind of. And she ran up the stairs and into the front of the church, and I presume she ran into the church, like the doors are open. And at first, my first reaction was, wow, must be a wedding going on today. And maybe she's trying to get in there to set things up. What would you think if you saw a woman in a wedding dress sprint into a church from the road? And again, she was barefooted. I could see her very clearly. She wasn't that far away. And then it occurred to me, next thought was, wait a minute, where'd she come from? And because at first I didn't think ghost. I usually don't. I'm like, where'd she come from? And I look around, there's no cars anywhere. There's no traffic. It's a dirt road. There's no houses anywhere around there. And there's very little reason for anybody to even drive on that road. Very remote place. And then I got intrigued. My son didn't see her. He wasn't looking. He was looking the other direction. And I walked over to the church expecting to find the doors open, not really knowing what to expect, because at this point I'm starting to think there's some spiritual going on here. And got up, and the front doors on the church were closed. And not only were they closed, they had a very heavy chain that went through both of the handles that you'd open the doors with and locked shut. Very heavy chain, locking and chaining the door shut. I walked around the church. There were no trees, no bushes, nowhere she could hide. And you could see in the windows. There weren't any curtains on the windows. And you could look right in. And I looked in there. And sure enough, it was just one big room. That's all, just one room. And there was no furniture in there. Just wooden floors. And there were no curtains, so you could see right clearly through the whole place. And there was no woman in there. So that's it. That's really the story. It's at that point I knew that I'd just seen a ghost of what looked like a beautiful young woman in a wedding dress. And I still recall seeing her sprint and holding her gown and handfuls of it, holding it up like this. And right up, I could see her knees and legs and her bare feet. And she was moving out, thump, thump. I could hear her thump, 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 and up the stairs. So that's it. That's story 26, the ghost of Arnold Hill Mining Company. And I often wondered, there must be a story behind this. Something probably tragic happened, who knows? It'd be interesting to find out. So I'll put the location of this place and some information down and, look it up. Maybe you'll find something. It seemed to me it's probably a tragedy of some sort. I probably never know. But that's story 26. That's kind of one of the ones, doesn't really have a story to it. It's just something I saw. Another woman in white, but this time very blonde and a most luxurious blonde hair, really thick, wavy blonde hair, a nice figure, nice looking woman, honestly. And like a farm girl in shape, the way she was running barefoot like that. So there it is. Take care. Story 27. Don't know what it's going to be yet, but I got a load of them. Thanks for watching.